I never meant to break into my husband's phone, but when his coworker texted him, "I miss you," and he kept stirring the soup like nothing happened, something inside me snapped. I replied for him, "Come over." I thought I was catching him cheating. I thought I was ready to see the worst. But when the woman walked through my door, crying and shaking, she didn't confess love. She confessed blood. And in one night, I discovered my husband wasn't lying about an affair. He was lying about who he truly was. If you had asked me that morning whether my marriage was safe, I would have said yes without hesitating. Not perfect, not magical, not romantic in the way storybooks promise, but safe, stable, predictable. Maybe predictable should have been my first warning. It had been months since Daniel and I had a real conversation that lasted more than 5 minutes without one of us checking the time, scrolling our phones, or pretending not to be tired. We didn't fight. We didn't scream. We didn't throw accusations. We simply drifted, the way people do when both assume the other will always be there. And that was probably why the sound of his phone buzzing, just one small vibration on the kitchen counter, felt like a crack in the glass I had been trying so hard not to look at. Daniel stood by the stove, stirring a pot of tomato basil soup like he was auditioning for a cooking show. His shoulders relaxed, his back straight, completely at peace. I envied him for that, for being able to move through a room without carrying the silent questions I carried. I wiped my hands on a towel and leaned on the counter watching him. He didn't notice. He rarely did anymore. The phone buzzed again. Then again. He still didn't move to check it. "Your phone's going off," I said, trying to sound casual. He shrugged. "Probably work. They can wait." That should have calmed me. It didn't. Something in me tightened, a small knot pulling at my ribs. I forced myself to look away, pretending to reorganize the spice rack, when the screen lit up once more. This time, my eyes caught the preview before I could stop myself. Just 3 words. 3 words that felt like ice water down my spine. "I miss you." My throat dried. The room seemed to tilt. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it's a friend, a cousin, someone from an old project. But the name beneath the text killed that hope instantly. Maya. Work. A woman. His coworker. Someone he saw every day. Someone I heard in passing, usually followed by phrases like, "She's sharp. She's a great team player. She gets things done." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. My heart thudded so loudly I thought he might hear it. I should have walked away. I should have asked calmly. I should have breathed. But betrayals, real or imagined, don't wait for logic. They take whatever version of you is available in the moment. The insecure version, the tired version, the version that remembers every time you felt second place. Before I could stop myself, my hand hovered over his phone. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked suddenly. I snapped my head up, my pulse hammering. "Yeah, fine. Just checking if the salt's expired." He chuckled lightly, unaware that the ground beneath me was already falling away. He walked to the pantry and turned the burner down. His phone buzzed again. This time, a longer preview. "Are you free tonight? I really need—" I didn't let myself read the rest. Something dark and impulsive took over. The version of me I didn't want to admit existed. My thumb swiped the notification open. My fingers shook. I stared into the open message thread. Messages. Late night timestamps. Inside jokes I didn't understand. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. And then, Daniel's footsteps returning. Panic shot through me. I pressed the phone screen off and placed it exactly where it had been. He walked past me casually, carrying a jar of oregano, humming like he had no secret in the world. That normalness, that unbearable, infuriating normalness, made something inside me snap. If he was guilty, he hid it flawlessly. If he wasn't guilty, then why did my body feel like it knew something before my mind did?
He tasted the soup and nodded to himself. Almost done. His phone buzzed again. This time, the universe was cruel enough to light up the entire screen. Maya, hey, are you there? Daniel didn't even glance at it. I'm going to grab the bread from the garage freezer. Be right back. He walked out, the door swinging behind him. And then, silence. Just me, the kitchen, and his phone. If he were having an affair, if he were lying, if he thought I would never check, my hand moved on its own. I unlocked the screen, opened the thread, and typed the words I knew could destroy everything or expose everything. Come over. I didn't think, I didn't breathe, I just hit send. The message left like a bullet. My hands were shaking as I locked the phone again and put it down exactly as before. My heart pounded, my mind spiraled. What was I doing? What if Daniel wasn't cheating? What if I miss you meant something else? What if I just invited destruction into my home? My mouth went dry. I paced, I sat, I stood, I checked the clock. 30 seconds passed, then 60. Then the phone buzzed. I forced myself to slowly turn and look. One new message. From her. I swallowed hard, walked to the counter, and read the preview. I'm on my way. The world went silent, and nothing in my marriage or in myself would ever be the same after that moment.
I stood rooted in the kitchen, staring at Daniel's phone as though it were counting down to an explosion. I'm on my way. Those 4 words echoed in my skull, louder than the ticking clock on the wall, louder than the fridge humming, louder than my breath, if I was even breathing at all. I felt jealousy rise first, hot and acidic, then betrayal, sharp and piercing, and beneath it, humiliation, the kind that burned deepest because it convinced you the world had been laughing at you long before you realized why. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to run. I wanted to throw something heavy just to hear it break. But instead, I stood still, frozen in the eye of my own emotional hurricane. The back door clicked open again. Daniel walked in carrying a loaf of frozen bread, humming the same casual tune he left with. Not an ounce of guilt, not an ounce of nerves, nothing. Just normal. Found it, he said cheerfully, lifting the bread like it was some triumph. Should we toast it or just warm it? I stared at him, trying to reconcile the man I knew with the man I suddenly feared I didn't. Through clenched teeth, I said, "Whatever you want." He replied, oblivious to the fact that my world had just split open. Okay. He set the bread down, grabbed a tray, and began arranging bowls and spoons. Meanwhile, my brain was staging a full-blown interrogation in my head. Was this how he acted around her? Calm, charming, comfortable? Had he hummed in her presence too? Had she seen the parts of him I had been losing? A wave of nausea hit me. I couldn't stand still anymore. I moved around the kitchen without purpose, checking drawers, wiping counters that were already clean, just to keep from looking him in the eye. "So," I said casually, trying to sound light, "how was work today?" "Busy," he answered without missing a beat. "Lots of end-of-month reports to finish." I waited. I hoped he'd offer something, anything that connected him to Maya. He didn't. "Did you, talk to anyone? Anyone need your help?" He paused only long enough to glance at me, a mild smile on his face. "Just the usual, nothing interesting." Nothing interesting. Nothing interesting. I felt a crack inside me, thin but visible, like hairline fracture spreading across glass. Someone who texts, "I miss you," is not nothing interesting. I pressed on. "So, nobody from your team reached out? No one needed to check in?" He grabbed 2 napkins, folding them absent-mindedly. "Nope. Why?" "Why? Why? Because someone who might be having an affair with you is on her way to my house right this second, Daniel." I swallowed the truth.
All of it, pushed it back down until my throat burned. I said no reason. He kissed my forehead as he passed me by. It felt wrong, too gentle, too familiar, too confident for someone who might be betraying me. "Dinner's ready," he said softly. I nodded, but my mind was nowhere near the dinner table. It was on the driveway, on the sidewalk, on the woman walking toward my house. The countdown had begun. I glanced at the oven clock. 6 minutes. It had been 6 minutes since I sent that message. 6 minutes until everything exploded. I sat mechanically at the table. Daniel ladled soup into bowls. I watched him. Every move he made felt like evidence. The way he adjusted his sleeves, the way he nudged my bowl closer, the way he smiled at me as if nothing in his world was wrong. Was that guilt? Was it innocence? Was he a master liar or simply unaware he was about to be exposed? Every answer felt wrong. I kept checking the window, expecting to see her silhouette. I kept listening for footsteps. Daniel was mid-sentence, something about a broken printer at work, when the sound split the air. The doorbell. A clean, sharp chime that sent a shock through my spine. Daniel looked up, brows lifting. Who could that be? Who indeed? My heart hammered so violently it felt like it might bruise my ribs. "I'll get it," I said quickly before he could stand. He didn't question it, just shrugged and took a sip of soup. I walked toward the front door with shaky hands, every step heavier than the last. I told myself I was ready. I told myself I wanted this. I told myself I deserved the truth. But nothing, not the jealousy, not the rage, not the humiliation could prepare me for what I saw when I opened that door. Maya didn't look seductive. She didn't look smug. She didn't look like a woman coming to steal another woman's husband. She looked terrified. Her eyes were swollen like she'd been crying for hours. Her hands trembled, clutching her purse against her chest. Her breath came out shallow, uneven. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her clothes were rumpled. She looked like someone who ran, not walked, from something. Definitely not the mistress I had imagined. For a moment, we just stared at each other. The air between us was sharp, brittle. I finally found my voice. "You're Maya?" She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Instead, tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. I stepped aside slightly, trying to keep my body from shaking. "You should come in." She didn't move. She scanned my face like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't want the answer to. Then she whispered, voice cracking, fragile, almost afraid to hear my reply. "Are you his wife?" And just like that, the war I thought I was preparing for shifted into something far darker, something I couldn't name yet. But I could feel it. This wasn't an affair. It was something else, something I was completely unprepared for. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Me, rooted in disbelief, her trembling like she'd walked through a storm to get here. This was not the entrance of a woman trying to steal someone's husband. This was someone who looked like she was here to deliver bad news or beg for help. I stepped aside. "Please, come in." She hesitated, looking over her shoulder as if she'd been followed. Only after a long, shaky breath did she cross the threshold, her arms wrapped around herself like she was holding her pieces together. I closed the door softly. She flinched at the sound. Not the vibe of an affair, not even close. "Do you want to sit?" I asked, gesturing toward the living room. She shook her head quickly. "No, I can't stay long." Her eyes darted around the house, not in curiosity, not in judgment, but in fear, real fear, the kind that makes a person forget to blink. For the first time since seeing that text, I felt something other than jealousy twisting inside me. Confusion, a bad kind of confusion. "So," I began carefully, "I saw your message, the 'I miss you.'" Her face crumpled instantly, like I'd pressed on a bruise. She looked down, shoulders shaking slightly. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have sent that." Her voice wasn't seductive. It was desperate. My brain scrambled to understand. What do you mean? Why did you text him that? She swallowed hard. I didn't know who else to reach out to. That didn't make sense. Not yet. You work with him every day, I said gently, trying to keep the accusation out of my tone. He said you guys were together on reports this week. She looked up sharply. What? No, I haven't seen him in over a week. The words hit me like cold water. What do you mean? I asked. He told me you guys were in the office together. She shook her head vigorously, tears touching her lower lashes. I've been working remotely. My manager approved it because of... She stopped herself. Her lips pressed tightly together, as if she'd almost revealed something she shouldn't. Something twisted deep in my gut. So you haven't seen Daniel, I repeated slowly, my voice thin. For a week? She shook her head again. No, not since the last time I tried to talk to him. Her voice cracked. He wouldn't even look at me. My pulse quickened. Why would my husband lie about something so simple? Why pretend he'd seen her? Why hide the fact that he was avoiding her? This wasn't adding up to an affair. This was adding up to something else, something I didn't understand yet. She wiped her eyes quickly. I shouldn't have bothered you. I really thought he'd answer himself. I thought he'd want to know. The sentence drifted off, unfinished, leaving a heavy silence behind it. Want to know what? A chill ran through me. Maya, why did you text him? And why are you here? She opened her mouth to answer, but footsteps approached from the kitchen. Daniel. His footsteps grew closer, casual at first, until he stepped into the hall and saw her. The shift was instant. He froze mid-step. The color drained from his face. His chest stopped rising. It was like he'd seen a ghost. Daniel, I said, watching him carefully, she's here because... But he didn't look at me. He didn't blink. He just stared at her. Her eyes welled up even more. Hi, she whispered, voice trembling. I'm sorry I showed up unannounced. I didn't know what else to do. Still, Daniel said nothing. I had seen him angry before, stressed, even overwhelmed. But this was something older, something carved into him long before I ever met him. A fear, a wound, a memory. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't panic over getting caught cheating. It was recognition, painful, raw recognition. Daniel, I said, firmer this time, you told me you saw her at work this week, but she says she hasn't seen you in days. His eyes flicked toward me, just for a second, empty, haunted, before snapping back to her. You shouldn't be here, he whispered, voice barely audible. Her tremble and her hands grew worse. I know, she stammered. I know, but I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to reach you. You won't answer me. You won't respond to anything. And Mom... Stop, he said sharply, pain slicing through the word. Her mouth snapped shut. My heart pounded. Mom? Who Mom? I looked between them, trying to decipher the broken pieces of a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. Maya hugged herself tighter. I'm sorry. I thought you should know. She doesn't have much time, and she keeps asking for you. Every day. Sometimes she forgets she already asked. Sometimes she forgets what year it is. But she remembers you. Her voice cracked, breaking all the way through. And she misses you. I looked at Daniel, my husband, the man I'd shared a home with for 6 years, and I didn't recognize the expression on his face. It wasn't the shock of someone exposed for cheating. It was the agony of someone confronted by a past he had run from. My own anger softened, replaced with a different kind of dread. Who was this woman to him? What past was she dragging into our home? Why had he lied about seeing her? Why was he terrified? Maya took a shaky step backward toward the door. I'm sorry, she whispered, her eyes dropping to the floor. I didn't have to come. She looked at him one last time, a look filled with heartbreak and resignation. He doesn't want anything to do with me. And just like that, My understanding of everything I thought I knew began to unravel.
I felt the air thin the moment those words left her lips. Not the full confession, just the tremor before it. The way her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. The way she braced her arms around herself like she was holding in a scream. My husband hovered behind me, silent, stiff, and lying with every breath he didn't take. "Enough," I said, my voice cracked. "Someone needs to say something, now." He swallowed hard, his eyes flicking between me and her like he was choosing which fire to burn in. "I told you," he muttered, "this is a misunderstanding." "That's not an answer." I stepped closer to him. "Why did she say she misses you? Why did you pretend like everything was normal? And why—" I turned to the trembling woman on my couch. "Why do you look like you're about to faint instead of flirt?" The coworker lifted her head slowly. Tears clung to her lashes, not falling, as if even gravity felt sympathy. "I didn't come here to cause trouble," she whispered. "I came because I didn't know what else to do." My chest tightened. "Then explain." She looked at my husband again, pleading. "Please, just let me tell her." He flinched. Actually flinched. "No," he said sharply. "This isn't your place." "Whose place is it?" I snapped. "Yours? Because you've had plenty of chances." He shut his mouth. His jaw clenched. The silence stretched so long I could hear my own pulse. Then she inhaled, a shaky, defeated breath. "I'm his sister." Everything in the room stopped moving. The clock, my lungs, even the dust in the air seemed to freeze mid-vol. I stared at her, then at him, then back at her. "No," I said weakly. "No, that's not. No, he doesn't have a sister. He never mentioned one, not once. In all our years, not in stories, not in family conversations, not in the quiet moments after wine when secrets slip out accidentally. He had never said the word sister in relation to himself. That's impossible." My husband's face drained of all color. He looked like a man watching an avalanche roll toward him, already knowing he won't outrun it. She, meanwhile, looked heartbreakingly certain. "I am," she said softly. "I'm his older sister." I turned to him, feeling like the floor beneath me was tilting. "Tell me she's lying." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "Say something," I demanded. Finally, he whispered, "She shouldn't have told you." That was not denial. It was surrender. My breath left me in a shaky exhale. Betrayal, confusion, anger, all of it tangled inside me like roots growing too fast. Why would you hide something like that? Why would you pretend your own sister doesn't exist? He ran a hand through his hair, pacing away. "It's complicated." "It's a yes or no question." He slammed his hand against the wall, not at me, just at the universe, and closed his eyes like the truth physically hurt. "I don't want to talk about this," he said tightly, but she did. "Do you remember," she said softly, addressing him, not me, "you spent a summer at Grandma Leela's. You broke your arm climbing that old swing. I was the one who carried you home. You cried the whole way, but told me not to tell Dad because you didn't want him to think you were weak." His eyes shot open. Pain flashed across them, raw, unguarded, real. "And when Mom left," her voice cracked on the word mom, "I found you in the closet wearing her sweater. You were only 6. You said it still smelled like her." My husband looked like each memory was a blade sliding under his skin. My mouth got dry. Those weren't general details. Those weren't fabricated memories. Those were the kind of childhood moments a stranger or a lover could never know. My knees weakened, and I sat down slowly, numb. "You're really his sister," I whispered. "Yes." "And he never told me." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. She wiped her cheek, voice barely audible. "He doesn't want anything to do with me or our family." He shot her a warning look, sharp enough to cut, but she didn't back down. "He erased us," she said, staring at him with both sorrow and defiance. "Like we never existed.
And I thought, if I reached out, maybe he'd let me back into his life. She looked at me next, but he told me to stay away. I swallowed hard. The room felt colder. Why? I whispered to him. Why would you erase your own family? His eyes darted to me, then to her, then to the floor. He folded into himself, closing every emotional door at once, an old habit, I realized. He wasn't acting like a guilty husband. He was acting like a hunted man. I had my reasons, he finally said. What reasons? They're not your concerns. Her breath hitched. They're hers now, she said. She deserves to know who she married. He lifted his head, and for just a second, I saw something inside him crack. Fear. Old, deep fear. I felt my heart pound. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't betrayal in the way I thought. This was something older, something heavier. A secret carved so deep it became a wound. She stood, wiping her tears, voice trembling with regret. I shouldn't have come. He doesn't want anything to do with me. And before either of us could respond, she walked toward the door. The chapter ends there, but the storm inside the house had only just begun.
The moment the door clicked shut behind her, the house fell into a suffocating silence. My husband didn't move, didn't look at me, didn't breathe normally. He just stood there, staring at the floor like he was afraid the truth would crawl out of it if he blinked. I waited. The anger had burned through me already. What remained was cold, sharp confusion, the kind that demanded answers, not shouting. Sit, I said quietly. He didn't argue. That alone frightened me more than anything. He lowered himself onto the couch with the heaviness of a man carrying decades, not years. His shoulders slumped, his hands trembled slightly. I had never seen him look so small. I sat across from him, knees almost touching his. Start talking. All of it. No more half-truths. He lifted his eyes to mine. They looked ruined. I didn't cheat on you, he said first, reflexively, defensively. I know, I replied, and I meant it, for the first time since this started. But you lied about something much bigger. He flinched. Why did she call herself your sister? Why did you pretend she didn't exist? He let out a long, shaky exhale. Then another. I didn't pretend, he murmured. I erased. That word hung in the air like smoke. I leaned back, stunned. Why? He rubbed his face with both hands, elbows on his knees, sinking into the memory whether he wanted to or not. I had another family, he whispered, before you, before college, before everything. My heart jolted, not with jealousy, with realization. He wasn't talking about a wife. He meant the family he came from. I swallowed. Your mother, your sister. He nodded slightly. And a childhood I never wanted to keep. His voice cracked, and for the first time since I'd known him, he didn't try to hide it. What happened? I asked softly. He looked past me, past the room, into something far away and bruising. When I was 8, he began slowly, my father left. Just vanished. Took the car, the money, half the furniture. One morning he was eating cereal with me, the next morning he was gone. And my mom, his voice thickened, she didn't handle it well. I didn't interrupt. His memories were spilling out, fragile and jagged. At first, just at night, then in the morning, then all the time. He swallowed, and when she drank, she got mean. A chill rolled through me. My sister was older, he continued. She tried to protect me. Every time Mom threw something, every time she screamed, every time she said Dad left because of us, he stopped to breathe. She'd pull me into her room and lock the door. She was just a kid, too. My chest tightened. I could picture it. A scared boy. A bleeding family. He said, "We grew up in poverty.
Lights shut off. Evictions. Mom disappeared for days sometimes. My sister would steal food from a gas station just to keep us alive. My stomach twisted. I'd known him for years, loved him for years, and yet this version of him, this broken childhood version, felt like a stranger. By the time I was 16, he said, voice hollow, I thought everything was my fault. The yelling, the poverty, the way she hit us, the way my sister cried in the kitchen late at night. Guilt vibrated in every word. I wanted out. I wanted a new life, a clean slate. So you left, I whispered. He nodded. At 18, I packed a backpack and walked away. I told myself I'd be back for my sister when I was stable, when I had a job, a home, something to offer. But you never went back. His jaw tightened. No. Why? I asked, not accusing, just trying to understand the man I thought I knew. He stared at his hands. Because when I left, I felt free for the first time. The silence was peaceful. No screams, no broken glass, no bruises, just quiet. He shook his head, ashamed, and I realized I didn't want to return to that life, not even to save her. I wanted to pretend none of it existed, to pretend I wasn't shaped by any of it. My breath caught. He was confessing the deepest sin of his life. So I cut ties, he said, changed my number, moved, built a new identity, a perfect, neat story, no mess, no family. Just me. And her? I whispered. Your sister? His voice broke. She tried to find me for years. She'd email from library computers, send letters, call old numbers. He swallowed hard. I ignored everything. I closed my eyes for a moment. Pain, his and hers, settled over me like dust. And the text? I asked gently. He let out a shaky exhale. It wasn't about me, he said, at least not the way you thought. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and handed it to me. The message thread was short. Her. I miss you. Her. Mom's getting worse. Her. Please, I don't know what to do. My throat tightened. She wasn't flirting, he whispered. She was reaching out because our mother is sick, really sick. He looked away, and she wanted me to know before it was too late. Another layer shifted inside me. Not forgiveness, but understanding. You could have told me, I said quietly. He was scared. He said, if I opened that door, even a crack, I'd lose the life I built, the version of me you know. I looked at him then, really looked. Not the calm, controlled man I married, not the responsible husband, not the stable adult who avoided conflict like a religion, but the boy who ran and never stopped running. And for the first time, I saw both versions at once. The damage, the guilt, the fear, the humanity. He looked up at me, eyes glassy. I'm not proud of what I did. I abandoned them. My mother, my sister, and now she's dying, and He didn't finish. He didn't need to. I moved closer, slowly, cautiously, like approaching a wounded animal that still wasn't sure if it should trust the hand reaching toward it. You don't have to go back alone, I said softly. He looked at me with a broken sort of hope. The chapter ends there, not in forgiveness, not in resolution, but in the quiet, uneasy space between past wounds and future choices. I sank back onto the couch beside him, the weight of his confession pressing down on both of us. His eyes were still distant, as if he could see the past crawling across the walls and into the room. I didn't know whether to reach for him or step back. You never told me, I whispered, my voice shaky. Not once. You let me live with, I faltered, unsure what to call it. Not a lie exactly, a half-life, a version of the man you choose to show the world, with
Someone I thought I knew. He flinched at my words, but only slightly. He took a deep breath and finally turned to face me, eyes glassy. I didn't tell you because I was afraid, he admitted. I was terrified that if you knew who I really was, what I came from, you'd leave. Or worse, you'd see me differently, like I'm broken in ways I can't fix. I swallowed. But you've been living with me all these years. Did you think hiding your own blood, your own family, would keep me here? That keeping secrets like that makes love safer? He shook his head. No, I thought it would protect you and me. His voice dropped, raw and unpolished. I was afraid you'd see me and think, I'm nothing but my father, a man who hurts people, a man who abandons the ones he should protect. I didn't want that shadow of me haunting our marriage. My heart clenched. The anger I had been nursing softened, replaced by an ache I hadn't expected. This wasn't just deceit. This was fear carved deep into his bones, the fear of becoming the man who had scarred him, the man he had run from for decades. You were afraid you'd become like your father? I asked quietly. That you were genetically predisposed? He flinched at the word genetically, like I had struck a nerve. I don't know, he admitted. I wanted to believe I could be different, that I could be better. But the thought, the fear, it's always there, in every decision, every silence, every lie of omission. I stared at him, and in that moment I realized something that made my chest tighten. I had been living with a stranger in some ways. Not because he didn't love me, not because he wanted to hurt me, but because the man I thought I knew had been carrying a life I couldn't see, a past I couldn't touch, and secrets he thought could destroy the marriage he loved. I stopped. How could I express both hurt and compassion at once? I don't know if I can forgive you for hiding so much, and yet, my voice faltered. I can't not feel for you either. He looked at me, something fragile flickering in his eyes, a vulnerability he never allowed anyone to see. You feel it too, he said softly. The weight, the silence. You feel it because you love me enough to see beyond my lies. I took a shaky breath. The room was too quiet. I felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the next wave to hit. Then she spoke. Maya, from the doorway, her voice trembling, still brittle. You need to know, she said, looking directly at him. Mom doesn't have much time. Maybe days? She keeps asking about you. Every day. Sometimes she forgets she already asked, but she remembers you, and she wants to see you. I turned my head slowly, meeting his gaze. The haunted, distant eyes I had seen in Chapter 5 were back, only deeper, darker, weighed down with decades of regret. I watched him inhale, the first true, honest breath he had taken in hours, then exhale, and finally, the cracks in his carefully built walls began to show. She wants me to see, he said quietly, more to himself than to any of us. After all these years, she wants to see me. I felt a pang of sorrow, not just for him, but for the family he had left behind, a mother, a sister, a childhood abandoned, trapped in silence. You've been carrying this alone, I said softly, all these years, and you thought keeping it from me would protect our marriage? He nodded, blinking rapidly, as if he could not fully process the weight of both our understanding. And the text? I gestured to my phone, still warm in my hands. She wasn't flirting with you? He shook his head. No, not at all. She just wanted me to know how serious it is. She's getting worse. The truth settled like ice in my stomach. The jealousy that had clawed at me since that first message was replaced by something heavier. Grief. For the mother he lost, for the sister he abandoned, for the little boy he had tried to outrun. I reached for his hand instinctively. He didn't pull away. For the first time in this house, in hours, maybe days, maybe years, he finally allowed someone to feel the burden with him. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know what comes next, but I squeezed his hand.
But you're not alone anymore. He looked at me, a glimmer of hope in the shadowed fear behind his eyes. I don't know if I can make it right, he admitted, but I have to try. For her, for my sister, for us. I nodded. Then we'll try together. The room felt heavy, but lighter at the same time. The truth hung between us like smoke in the sunlight, thick, real, and undeniable. And in that moment, I realized something profound. The man I thought I knew was not just my husband. He was the boy who would run from his past, the man who had survived it, and the person he could become if he dared was someone I could help him be. Outside, the faint hum of life continued, but inside, a fragile bridge had begun to form, one built of truth, fear, and the unspoken hope that some wounds could finally begin to heal.
The next morning, I tried again. I tried to nudge him, gently, softly. "Daniel," I said, keeping my voice low so the boys upstairs wouldn't hear, "we can't just wait. You need to see her. Mom, she's dying." He shook his head, rigid as ever. "I can't. Not today. Not yet." "Not yet?" I repeated, incredulous. "She may not have a next yet. Daniel, she's only got days. You have to go." He looked away, jaw tight, eyes glassy. I can't face her. I can't." His voice broke, and he swallowed heavy with something I couldn't name. Fear, maybe. Shame? Regret? All of it. "Daniel," I said, my voice firm, "you don't get to run anymore. Not from her, not from your past, not from this." He shook his head again, refused, stubborn, immovable. I bit back my frustration. And then a decision formed inside me. I couldn't let him bury himself in guilt for one more second. I grabbed my keys. I found Maya in the kitchen, standing frozen, holding the trembling bag of her mother's medications. "We're going," I said. She looked at me, panic and hope tangled on her face. I can't go without him. He is staying here," I interrupted. "We can't wait. We don't know how long we have. Come on." She hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded, a fragile acceptance in her trembling shoulders. The drive was quiet. Maya sat in the passenger seat, glancing nervously at me from time to time. I didn't try to comfort her. Words felt hollow. Actions mattered more. When we arrived, the small, faded house looked smaller somehow, fragile, like it had been holding secrets and regrets for decades. I helped Maya up the porch steps. The front door opened before we could knock. Her mother, frail, bent, and pale, appeared, eyes wide as she saw her daughter. She reached out instinctively, fingers trembling. "Maya?" she whispered. Her voice was barely audible. I wasn't sure." "She's here," I said softly, "and she brought someone else." The mother's eyes flicked to me and narrowed for a fraction of a second, as if measuring whether I was friend or intruder. Then they softened. "She's the wife," I nodded. Maya stepped forward, tears streaming. The mother's frail arms trembled as she pulled her daughter close. Then came the confession. "She didn't come alone. She says she wants you to see him." I watched the mother's eyes widen slightly. The recognition didn't come in a moment of joy. It came as a ripple of old regret, the kind that carries decades of silence. You brought him," she whispered, though it wasn't Daniel. "Not yet." Maya shook her head. He can't. He won't." The mother closed her eyes, a shudder racking her body. I understand." I realized then that the grief in this house wasn't just for lost time. It was for survival, for guilt, for choices that had been made to protect. Maya finally turned toward me, voice breaking. "Mom, there's something I need to say. Something that's been on my heart for years." The mother nodded weakly, barely able to keep her eyes open.
I've been trying to reach him. I wanted him to come. I wanted him to know. But I think maybe he needed me to do this for him." The frail woman reached for her daughter's hand, clutching it with a strength that belied her body. "Why? Why didn't you come sooner? Why did you push me away?" Maya's voice cracked. Because he never came back. And I thought maybe it was my fault. Or maybe he needed to forgive himself first." The mother's eyes went wide. No, I pushed him away. I told him I didn't want him anymore." Maya froze. You told him that?" The mother nodded, tears falling freely now. "I told him I didn't want him. I thought if he never had me, maybe he could be better than me, better than him." The words hit me like a hammer to the chest. You hurt him because you loved him?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. "Yes," she admitted, voice quivering. "Every day I've regretted it, every day. But I wanted him safe. I thought if he never had me, maybe he could be better than me, better than him." I felt a lump in my throat. Both sides had punished themselves for years. Both had carried a guilt that wasn't theirs alone. Maya whispered softly, "He doesn't know I'm here yet, but he needs to. He needs to see you. He needs to understand." I nodded. "And he will. One day soon." The mother's hands clutched hers tighter. I just want to see him. Just for a moment. One last time. So he knows I didn't hate him. That I tried to protect him." I felt the weight of decades settle around us. Not anger, not jealousy, not resentment, but sorrow and understanding. For the first time, I realized how deeply both sides had carried this burden. The mother, the son, the sister, all trapped in silence, all suffering quietly to protect one another. And I, standing in the middle, could finally see it. The heartbreak wasn't about abandonment. It wasn't about lies or betrayal. It was about love, the kind so fierce it destroys and protects at the same time. I reached for Maya's hand. "Let's get him here," I said quietly. "He needs this. And maybe it's time he forgives himself." She nodded, tears glistening. And for the first time since the morning, I felt a fragile hope begin to bloom inside me. The visit had begun, not with him, but with the courage to face what had been hidden for too long. When I stepped back into our house, the silence felt heavier than ever. The kitchen smelled faintly of toast from the morning, but the air was tense, like it had been holding its breath all day, waiting for something to snap. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. My mind was still tangled in the images from the visit, the frail mother, the trembling sister, the words that had been whispered through tears and regret. I found him in the living room, slouched on the couch, staring blankly at the floor. His hands were intertwined, knuckles white. He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge my presence. I took a deep breath and sat across from him. "Daniel," I began gently, "I went with Maya. I saw your mother." He didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor, unseeing. I leaned forward. She's worse than we thought. Fragile, scared. She's dying." Finally, his gaze flicked toward me, eyes wide with mixture of fear and denial. I can't," he whispered, voice barely audible. "You can," I said firmly. "She's asking for you. She needs to see you. And you need to see her." He shook his head, voice trembling. "I can't face her. I can't face what I left behind, what I caused. I can't." "You're scared," I said softly, "of losing her, like you lost them, of being punished for the years you weren't there. I know." He closed his eyes and let out a shuddering breath. I saw him falter,
and for the first time, the walls he'd built around himself began to crumble. I kept it from you because I was terrified. Terrified you'd see the past and leave. Terrified you'd look at me and see the boy I was and the man I might still be and reject me. The tears came slowly at first, pooling at the corners of his eyes, then faster, spilling down his cheeks, hot and unrelenting. I stayed silent, letting him unravel. I didn't rush him, I didn't judge him, I just watched the man I loved, fragile, broken, raw, collapse in front of me. He never let anyone see this, he admitted between sobs. Not my friends, not my colleagues, not even you. I thought if I kept it buried, if I kept it hidden, maybe it wouldn't matter. Maybe I could survive it alone. I reached for his hand, tentatively at first, then more firmly. I don't have to survive it alone anymore. Not now, not ever. He flinched at my touch, like it was foreign. Then slowly, he let me hold him. His body sagged against mine, the tension and years of fear spilling out into my lap. I gasped, voice breaking with every word. I was scared that if you knew the truth, you'd leave. And I couldn't bear to lose you too. I already lost them. You didn't lose me, I said softly, and you won't. But you can't protect the past by hiding from it. You have to face it. You have to face them. Your mother, your sister, all the people you've carried guilt for. He drew in a shaky breath, eyes closing as if he could summon the courage from somewhere deep inside. I don't know if I can, he admitted. I've been running for so long. From her, from them, from myself. You can, I whispered, because I'll be with you. And maybe facing it won't erase the pain, but it can stop you from carrying it alone anymore. Healing, it's still possible, even now. He opened his eyes, wet and glistening, and met mine. For the first time in hours, or maybe years, I saw a glimmer of hope there. He hesitated, swallowing hard. I will go. I'll see her. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I'll go. I nodded, squeezing his hand. That's all she needs. And you, that's all you need. One step, one moment at a time. He exhaled slowly, finally releasing some of the tension he'd carried like armor for decades. Okay, he whispered. One step, one moment. I'll do it. I felt a fragile relief wash over me. Not victory, not closure, but the first small step toward both. He leaned back on the couch, exhausted but no longer resisting. I brushed the hair from his forehead, and for the first time since this began, I felt him relax into my presence. Not the perfect husband I thought I knew, not the stranger he'd kept buried, but the man who had survived his past and was finally willing to face it. And I knew this was the turning point. Truth had broken him open, but it had also given him a chance to heal. And for the first time in years, I believed he would.
The drive to our house felt impossibly long, though it had only been 30 minutes. Daniel sat quietly beside me, hands clasped tightly together, jaw clenched like he was holding every secret, every regret, every ounce of fear inside him. For hours he had barely spoken, but I knew what was running through his mind. Decades of silence, abandonment, and guilt were finally converging on a single moment. Maya was waiting on the porch, looking small and tense, holding the door open. As soon as we stepped inside, the faint smell of antiseptic and warm blankets enveloped us. His mother lay in bed, frail, skin pale and translucent, eyes clouded with fatigue yet still piercingly alive. The moment she saw him, she reached out, trembling. "Daniel," she whispered, voice ragged with emotion. I'm so sorry for everything, for leaving you, for hurting you, for the years I never got back. His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. I could see the walls he had built around his heart begin to crumble, the armor of decades cracking under the weight of his mother's words. He stammered, tears welling in his eyes, lips quivering. I've carried it all. Every day, every mistake, every abandonment. I thought I could survive it alone. She shook her head weakly, tears spilling down her cheeks. I know, my son. I pushed you away because I thought it would protect you. But I see now, I only made it worse. You've been carrying all this pain by yourself, and I am so sorry. For the first time since I met him, I watched Daniel break completely. His shoulders shook as sobs tore from him, deep, guttural grief finally released. He buried his face against her frail hands, holding them as though letting go would mean losing her forever. I stayed beside him, not speaking, letting the moment exist. The room felt suspended in time, the past and present colliding, old wounds bleeding into forgiveness. Maya was standing quietly near the doorway, her own tears streaking her cheeks. She had carried this burden alone for so long, and now she was finally witnessing a wound begin to heal. Her eyes softened as she watched her brother and mother reach across years of pain, bridging the gap she had always wished to cross. I wanted to record this, his mother said suddenly, voice weaker but steady, reaching for a small recorder beside the bed. Before I'm too weak. I want you to hear it when I'm gone, for your future, for your marriage, for your life.
Daniel nodded, voice choked. I understand. She pressed the record button, then, with all the strength she could summon, spoke directly to both of them. Daniel, my son, I am proud of the man you became. I am sorry for the pain I caused you, the love I withheld, the years I let slip by. You have forgiven yourself in ways I never could have imagined. Cherish your life. Cherish her, your wife. She is your anchor. Protect your family, love deeply, and live fully. I am at peace knowing you carry my love, finally, not my mistakes. Daniel pressed his hand to his chest as he listened, tears streaming freely. He looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the raw weight of everything he had hidden and finally let go. I didn't know how to forgive myself, not fully, but hearing her, I can. I can move forward. I held his hand tightly. And I'll be here, I said softly, every step. Maya's lips trembled as she said, Mom, thank you for letting us see her, for letting him finally come home. His mother smiled faintly, lips trembling, eyes glistening. I'm so glad. I've waited for this moment for a lifetime. Then, with a peaceful exhale, her body relaxed, her eyes closed, a faint smile lingering on her lips. She had finally reconciled with her son, with her daughter, with the life she could no longer control. Daniel let out a shaky breath, collapsing slightly against the bed. He remained silent for a long moment, as if absorbing the enormity of what had just happened. I could feel the years of pain, fear, and regret lifting, replaced by something fragile, tentative, but real. Hope. She's gone, Daniel whispered, voice ragged. Yes, I said softly, squeezing his hand. But she left something behind, her love, her blessing, and now you can live fully, without carrying it all alone. He nodded, tears still streaming, but a subtle weight had lifted. The man who had been trapped by guilt, by fear of becoming like his father, by the secrets he had carried for decades, was finally free. Maya stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. We can heal now, together. He looked at her, then at me, and for the first time in the story, he smiled through his tears. Not a forced smile, not a cautious one, a real one, an honest beginning. And in that moment, I realized
The past had finally been faced, the truth released, and the future, however uncertain, however fragile, could now be lived without fear. The last goodbye had been said, and somehow in that pain and in that release, life felt whole again.
The days after her passing felt suspended in a strange, heavy stillness. The funeral was small, just family, a few distant relatives, and us. Yet it carried more weight than any crowd could. It was a moment not just to say goodbye to a mother, but to honor a lifetime of pain, regret, and love that had been buried under silence. Daniel stood beside me, rigid at first, but gradually the stiffness softened. His sister held his hand tightly, her presence steadying the brother who had once been so fragile, so afraid. After the ceremony, we stayed behind in the quiet house she had lived in for decades. Maya and Daniel moved through the rooms together, rediscovering the home they had both left behind, both physically and emotionally. It wasn't just furniture they were seeing. It was memories, old laughter, and the ghosts of moments that had been lost to time. I want to start again with her, Daniel said quietly, almost to himself. I want to be a brother she can trust. I don't want to run anymore. I watched him, noticing the subtle shift in his posture, the softening in his eyes. Then you will, I said. We'll all rebuild together, piece by piece. He nodded, but I could see the shadow of guilt still lingering. I'll start therapy, he admitted, voice low but determined. I need help to face everything I've carried, to stop hiding from the past, from myself, from everyone I love. I squeezed his hand, my chest tight with emotion. And you won't be alone. You'll have me. You'll have your sister. We'll hold you accountable, but we'll hold you with love. The days that followed were quieter, softer. Daniel spoke more openly, laughter returning in small bursts, tentative but real. Maya and he began rebuilding a connection, long, awkward at first, full of apologies neither thought they could voice, but slowly, steadily, trust returned. I too found myself reflecting on the morning everything began, the message that had upended my world. I miss you. I assumed betrayal. I assumed infidelity. But in reality, it had revealed something far deeper. A man hiding from the boy he used to be, from the family he abandoned, from the parts of himself he thought were too broken to share. That message, that tiny, innocent text, had torn open the layers he had carefully built around himself. And through that, it had given us all a chance to rebuild, not just a marriage, but a family. One evening, weeks after the funeral, I found a letter slipped under our front door. It was in the delicate, shaky handwriting of her mother. To the woman who brought my son home, thank you. Thank you for showing him that love isn't something to fear, and that the past does not have to define the future. Care for him and for each other as you both deserve. Love, Mom. I held the letter to my chest, tears streaming, a mixture of grief, relief, and quiet joy flooding through me. I handed it to Daniel. He read it slowly, his voice catching as he whispered, She saw us. She forgave us. And I can forgive myself. I hugged him tightly, letting him collapse into the embrace he had avoided for decades. In that moment, the weight of all the hidden truths, the pain, the fear, the silence, finally felt lighter. Our marriage, tested and fractured, was no longer just surviving. It was stronger, deeper, honest in ways it had never been. The truths we had hidden, the guilt we had carried alone, had finally been shared, and through that, we were free. I thought about how fragile life is, how easily secrets and fear can shape a person, and how the smallest act, a single text, a moment of courage, can unravel a world we thought we knew. Looking at Daniel, and at the bond he had begun to rebuild with his sister, I realized something important. The biggest betrayals aren't romantic.
They aren't the lies told in passion or desire. They are the truths we hide from the people we love, believing we are protecting them or ourselves, but in reality, we only carry the weight longer. And now, for the first time, we could all lay it down. We were a family again, not perfect, not unbroken, but real. And somehow, that felt enough. I folded the letter, placing it gently on the table, and took Daniel's hand. "We're going to be okay," I whispered. He nodded, eyes wet but steady. "Yes," he said softly. "We are." And in that quiet, sunlit living room, with the echoes of the past still whispering but no longer controlling us, I finally believed it. A new kind of family, stronger, wiser, and built on truth, had begun.
Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you had to face a secret from someone you love, how would you react? Also, from which city are you watching? We'd love to hear from you.